We're back here at Coda Conversations. Brian Goodspeed returns to us once again.
Yes,
How's it
sir.
going, man?
Hey, man, going good, man, as usual, man. How about you?
Oh man, can't complain.
Yes, sir.
Every day above ground is a blessing.
Hey, man, gotta be that. Gotta be that.
Man, so how was your Thanksgiving? How was your holidays?
Ah, man, I can't complain, man. Hey, man, good. I did a lot of cooking, so I'm taking the reins on that. So, I'm trying to make it happen. And everything wasn't perfect, but hey, I did what I did. I'll do my thing in the kitchen just as long as I do it on the computer, just the same way.
Yeah, yeah, it did
What
what you
about
got
you,
to
man?
do. Oh man, this podcast thing been keeping me busy, man. But you got to put your work in if you want to get the results.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's get it.
Yeah, yeah, man. So yeah, today's subject, what I want to talk about today, and it's something that both me and you have been embracing more and more, is just being a leader, especially in our
Hmm.
jobs.
Yeah.
And even it was your second job, it was my first job at this company called Consultmore. You were
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
step in and you were able to rapidly progress through the ranks. Even though you didn't have a bunch of experience, you were able to demonstrate leadership capabilities. So,
Yeah.
can you walk us through your mentality during that time?
Yeah. So I'm gonna I'm gonna make it very blunt at first, and then I'm gonna come back around and then explain my context, right? I just did what felt natural to me, right? That's the blunt, straightforward answer because something needs to be done and somebody puts a requirement on you and nobody tells you how to meet said requirement, right? Like you come to a position and say, this is what I expect to do. And then something presents itself to where this is what I should or need to do to make sure that this happens in an efficient way. And so I remember, man, consult more was that was my I'm gonna be honest, like that was even though I had a position before that, I had a quote unquote entry level position where I was basically chasing bugs, things like that. But consult more was my first real position where I felt like I was developing, right? And Angular 2 was in RC at the moment, right? So you can think about how long ago that was, right? Like Angular 2. We're not talking about just Angular. We're talking about Angular 2, which at that time it wasn't even ready for production, but we pressed forward in our team to go ahead and use that with the thought process that by the time this becomes a real product and things that we're going to produce to clients, that Angular 2 would be production ready. So with that being said, even though Angular, like Angular 1, was prominent in the industry, that opportunity became presented to me because I was going above and beyond and actually fiddling and playing with Angular 2, even though it wasn't production ready. And I didn't know that that was going to lead me to a position. But I just say that to say, when you think about what is important today, what is valuable today, that's okay, right? You can definitely find a job, find a position, find value in that. But what's going to be important tomorrow is way more important, in my opinion, in this particular industry because it moves so fast. And so when I came into that position, I was coming off an entry level position, and I'm gonna be honest, didn't learn a lot, especially not specifically with Angular 2. But when I took that interview, I think they saw something in me that I may not even have saw in myself at that moment. And I just took it, right? Like I took it and ran with it. I treated it like a side project. Like I treated it like it was my project. And because it was my project, because there was no one else really working on it. There was one other guy, but he was more of a back end guy. So they brought me in to be the front end guy. And he knew of Angular 2, but that wasn't his expertise. And so I came in as the quote unquote expert. And I think that a big part of that comes from being an expert doesn't mean that you know everything. It just means you know more than everybody else that's around you. Right. So at that point, I became the expert, not because I knew the most or knew everything about Angular 2, but I knew more than what I felt like in the moment than everybody else. Uh, which kind of brings me around, full circle. I think that being a component of your craft, right? Learning and taking it upon yourself to try to be on the cutting edge of your industry puts you in a position to be an expert, even when you may not be considered that to some other people. But as long as you are that to the company that you're in, you can definitely advance in your quote unquote position, like senior, junior. All of that stuff is ambiguous when you think about the grand scheme of things. Like, it's more about what you know in this company or how valuable you are to this company than it is your actual position.
Right, right. And I think that, a lot of times when you step into a company, there's going to be a void there. There's things that need to get done, but nobody wants to step up
Mhm.
and take responsibility, take accountability. And, a lot of times these projects are kind of languishing. They're not going as expected. And you might be put on one of these projects, and it's up to you to step up and say, hey, I'm gonna be accountable. I'm gonna own this.
Mhm.
Things fall on me. And it's a choice you have to make, because it's really easy to come into a company and just kind of chill, just hang in the background, be quiet during meetings. But that's really going to limit you in terms of your career, in terms of growing, because they're not going to look at you as a leader. Like, there's people who are really good at technical stuff,
Mhm.
magnificent, but they always hit that ceiling because they never step up and take the leadership reins. They just kind of hang in the background. So what was it that made you want to step up and be that leader, and not just kind of chill and hang in that background?
Um, Not to be elusive to the question, but I mean, nothing made there was not a conscious thought process in my head that, oh, I want to step up and do this. It was more or less that, hey, this is innately something that I feel compelled to do, right? Like, when you come into a scenario or project, a company or whatever, and you see things that need to be done, I don't need to wait to be told to do it, because I see and I recognize. So I think it's being mindful of the constructs of a project, right? Or even the constructs of a company, and see what pieces are missing and how do I attribute myself to fulfill said void, right? Like, so when you think about, a project and there's API that needs to be developed, that may not be your thing. However, you may recognize, hey, we're missing some pieces over here. So what can I do to fill said void? And it may not be you actually developing or doing the work. It could be just something as simple as, I recognize that this is something that we need to do. Hey, let me ask the question. So I recognize this void over here. What are we doing to fill said void? And that may become your opportunity to expand your horizons, expand your knowledge, but also what you do in that same caveat is show that you have the initiative to recognize these little, spaces where things need to be addressed, which puts you in a leadership role. Like, you don't necessarily have to have the title to assume the responsibilities. I I can't hear you, Kev.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There we go. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think what you mentioned was really important, that word initiative, because
Hmm.
before a company puts you in a specific role, you have to demonstrate that you have those characteristics. They have to look and see and say, oh, he's demonstrating leadership, therefore I'm going to put him in a leadership position. So,
Hmm.
it's easy to get in that mindset of saying, I'm not going to do this because I'm not getting paid for this. I'm going to just do what I'm
Hmm.
getting paid for. I'm a quote unquote senior developer, so I'm going to just keep it technical. I'm going to just do my job and get out of here. But yeah, if you want to be the one that's chosen for the leadership position, when you like, kind of like what you mentioned, these different scenarios that you see, you have either two choices. You could be proactive or reactive, or I
Mm-hmm.
would say even three choices, or do nothing at all. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, like you say, this API is missing or something's a little off about it. You can just say, I'm gonna just wait till the back end guys discover this. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm gonna just wait till they fix it. Or
Yeah.
you can reach out to somebody on the back end and say, hey, I noticed that this is happening. I just wanted to notify you. In
Yeah.
that instance, you were proactive. And when you're continually proactive, people are going to notice and they're going to look at you as somebody who really cares about the product, and therefore they can entrust you with leadership.
Oh, absolutely. And another part to that same point is ownership, right? Like if you feel like you own a product or you own a project, you're more likely to exert yourself in a more substantial way, in a more meaningful way, because this isn't just your job at this point. I feel connected to this project. So when we're talking about consult more, when I came in as what seemingly, as far as my experience was concerned, as a junior developer, I pretty much skipped right over senior, not because of my tenure or my years of experience, but because of what I was contributing to the project. Like I was completely autonomous. I didn't have anybody telling me, what to do, when to do it. They basically gave me the reins, and that could be just simply because of the small nature of the company, but that just goes to my point where it's not necessarily your years of experience or what you're doing more or less than what it is that you're doing for the company or the position that you're in. So I just go back to say, anytime you find yourself in a position to do more, if you really want to lean toward advancing, and this just ain't about leadership more or less than it is just being the next level or going to the next level, you have to exhibit yourself in that way first before you just get that opportunity. So when you talk about leadership, yes, you have to show the abilities to lead the charge on something. I remember, for an example, working on Angular 2 when NGRX came out. And this had nothing, nobody at the company was thinking about it. Nobody at the company had an idea or a thought process even toward NGRX. However, because I was ingrained in my craft and I was constantly, looking into that type of stuff, I had a side project that I was using it and I thought it was cool. And so I brought that to my superior and I was like, hey, I think this would be dope, not only just as a new technology, but I really believe in the paradigms as far as state management is concerned and how that would benefit the project as a whole. See, I'm thinking outside the box. Nobody told me to look at that. Nobody told me that this would be a great idea. I determined that it would be a great idea. And then we adopted that. You know what I mean? So, um, but then when you came in, remember, how did you, well, how did you view me? Like from your perspective, what position did you consider me in?
Well, like initially, like when I came in, or just
Yeah,
as we went on.
just when you initially came in,
No,
like
I mean, like you were the lead front end guy.
yeah, and I wasn't, but
Yeah.
when you came in, like no different than you or some of our other colleagues, like anytime somebody else came in, I took the initiative to get them up to speed. I was the go-to guy to ask questions to. Why? Because I wrote the majority of the code base. Like, and again, it's probably more or less because of the size of the company at the time. But at the end of the day, I showed the initiative.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And just showing initiative is a choice you make.
Hmm.
Every day you go to the job, you have opportunities to do something without somebody prompting you to do it.
Yeah,
And you just got to make that choice. I'm gonna do this.
yeah.
Okay. But I think another not downside, but a potential area of concern is if you take initiative on something they don't want you to take initiative on, and you make a wrong choice. So how do
Mm.
you avoid doing that?
So that's going to be very situational, in my opinion. You can't, right? You can't completely avoid it. I think that even if you make a mistake or you make a wrong decision, because let's just keep it real. Even the largest companies make bad decisions. Even the people who are appointed to do so make bad decisions. I think the fact that you're even making decisions is more important than the fact that you're making the wrong decisions. However, a caveat to that is you should feel completely confident in whatever it is that you suggest, whatever decisions that you make, whatever leadership that you're taking. You should be so confident in that even if it does fail, you be like, okay, well, you know what? Even though that didn't work out, it still was a good decision to even go down that road, because the path to positive or the path to success down that decision path would be advantageous nonetheless. So doing it or trying it and then not being, right, is better than not trying at all and then avoiding what could have been a great decision. You know what I mean? And I think that comes with leadership, right? Like, there's no leader who has done everything perfectly, who's made every decision exactly correct. You have to be willing to take those risks and then step out on faith and step out on these opportunities to seize the moment to do something great. You know what I mean? That's part of leadership.
Yeah, that's very important. Is stepping out on faith, because, like you mentioned, you're never going to be in a situation where you always have all the facts. It's not like mathematics where 2 plus 2 is always 4. You're not always going to know the end result.
Right.
So, when you have a lot of this imperfect information, you just have to do your due diligence and make a choice. And, you just have faith that it's going to turn out how it needs to turn out. But to increase your probability of making a good choice, that's where you do your research. That's where you consult with others, and you read your books.
Mm-hmm.
You do all your everything you can to have the most amount of information you can get within this allotted time period. Then
Yeah.
once you pour it over everything, you just pick something, based on all that information, and you ride with it. And then you watch it, you analyze it, and you see the results, and then you make adjustments from there. But you have to step out and make that choice.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I guess that's something that it's hard to teach, right? That's something that you have to find within yourself, being confident, being in a position to say, hey, I recognize something. Let me speak out about it versus saying, oh, I recognize something and, well, maybe it's the wrong idea, or, oh, well, maybe nobody will accept it, or, none of that really matters. Like, in this industry, you really have to try things. Like, this is a very, um, malleable and dynamic industry where it could be literally decision to use one library versus another that could make or break a project. You just never know. It could mean the difference between 1,000 lines of code or 500 lines of code. Uh, I think that a lot of times that we kind of get into a robotic mindset as coders, where here's the requirements, let me just pump out what it is that needs to be done. Where if you really want to start taking on that leadership role, you need to start thinking beyond just your current task and how does this benefit the project as a whole, and not maybe even just this project, but this company, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And another important thing I think is that you have to think, you have to stop thinking that I'm just a coder. You
Right.
have to really think I'm a leader. I'm somebody that's going to take charge. I'm looking at the bigger picture. I'm not just looking at me generating these lines of code, because other
Yeah.
stuff, you're eventually going to be replaced if you don't bring
Yeah.
value aside from just pumping out code.
No,
You
for
have to
real.
be the guy with the solutions. If you personally can't generate the solution, you have to be able to reach out to the person who has that knowledge to generate that solution. So another characteristic is just being able to bring people together to accomplish this desired result. What,
I
what do you
want
think?
I want to pause right there real quick because
Mm,
I got to run. I got to make this run real quick. We're gonna
okay.
edit this, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, give me 1 second.
But yeah, to just keep it going. As a leader, you have to think beyond just yourself. You have to be able to bring others together. The ultimate agenda is being somebody who can get things done, who can make these solutions manifest. So, one of the things that you're going to have to start doing is being more social, able to interact with others and be able to reach out to them. And in the process of reaching out to them communicatively, to be able to get an intended result, to be able to get your agenda accomplished. So, for example, a lot of companies, they have various messaging systems. They have things like Teams or Slack, etc. It's really easy to just sit there and you log on, you just do your stand up, and that's it. You don't reach out to anybody, you don't talk to anybody after the meetings. But if you want to be a leader, you need to get to know all your other team members, even if you're not technically over them. Know their capabilities and know who you need to reach out to in a specific situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And becoming ingrained inside of your company, not again as a technical person, but also as a people person, because leadership ingrains more than just what your knowledge is of the libraries or the technology, but also the ability to, what the name entails, lead. Like you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able not just communicate, but to communicate effectively. You got to be able to pull what is the best version of people out, right? So it's not just about doing your job or knowing what to do. It's also about knowing the people. And I think that a lot of, for the lack of better words, let's just call it what it is. A lot of times in our industry, coders aren't the most sociable people. You know what I mean? Like I get it all the time. Like nobody ever believes that I'm a software engineer just because I'm a very sociable person. And not to, knock our industry, but like that's usually the mantra that most people have for us, software engineers. So when you start exhibiting a behavior or a skill set beyond just the technical side, and you actually become a people person, I think that also is very important. Yes, knowing what you know is important, but knowing who you know is even more important.
And what's really interesting to me is if you're not socializing, you can be better than a lot of people technically, but they're going to get the promotion because they're in constant contact with the higher ups. They're
Mhm.
more cooler with the leadership. So the leadership, they're not necessarily seeing what you can do. They're more so focused on the guy that's communicating with them and on the surface taking control of the situation because this person stood up and is the one that's verbally communicating what they're doing, how they're controlling the situation. So like even in stand-ups, you have to be able to effectively communicate. You shouldn't just be like, yeah, well, I worked on this feature today. You have to really elaborate and you know, kind of even communicate some foresight, like, okay, I came across this problem and this is the solution I'm bringing to the table. Like, you have to demonstrate your ability to lead in places like stand ups as well.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, like that's a great opportunity because a lot of times stand-ups, everybody's involved, right? Like from now, obviously, like the higher ups aren't involved, but like the level of direction and leadership, like directors, and VPs, a lot of times they are in those type of meetings, depending on the size of the company. So yes, that's a perfect opportunity to stand up and stand out. I will say this though, being like an advocate of your project or your product or whatever the case may be, or just the company in general outside of those moments, also lends a great opportunity. You could just be in the break room, or you could just, have a thought process and just stop by their office, or just, Slack them, or hit them up on Teams and just like, hey, I had this idea, I had this thought process. Do you got a moment, to talk about it? I'd really like to, kind of discuss this a little bit. Like, again, just taking the initiative to connect with people, right? And even if it's a technical subject matter, just going outside of your comfort zone and showing them who you are as a person, your ability to go at the forefront and not wait to be told what to do or not wait to be given instruction is invaluable.
Exactly. And you know also what's important is just avoiding falling into that apathy zone where you're like, well, I'm gonna just show up, I'm gonna just do what I gotta do. They're not paying me, so I don't really feel like leading. I don't really feel like taking accountability. I'm comfortable just getting the job done and kind of disappearing.
Yeah.
It is comfortable doing that and it is possible, but you're making yourself replaceable because
Yeah.
you know technical skills, they can find somebody who is able to fix
Yeah.
these problems, but leadership is a little more difficult.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, I don't want to, step on any toes, obviously, like, because there's a place for just developers, people who just enjoy what they do. But there's also that, finite amount of people who really enjoy working with people. And I will say this once and I'll say it again. Like, leadership isn't for everybody. Like, this is a lane that I feel like some people in our industry feel like it's just a rite of passage, and it's not. Because it doesn't matter you can be with the company for 15 years, but if you're not a people person, if you don't exhibit those qualities, then you don't just automatically get it. Like senior, you're gonna get it no matter what. You're gonna get the senior level just based off of your tenure, how many years you put in the game, because you're gonna learn things. Like it's almost impossible to do this job and not learn something along the way. So yes, with enough time, you're gonna become senior. But when you want to transition and you really want to make that leap, if it's your goal, your desire, your dream to be a leader, then there's a completely different skill set that's required to actually fall into that lane. And you can literally fall into it because, like, Kev, you even have done that before, where you go in as a developer, but you're exhibiting leadership qualities.
Yeah, I've done that at several of these companies that I worked at, Citigroup, um, what was that, Caliber Home Loans, and even
Mhm.
at this job, it's you for whatever reason, like you just sort of gravitate, you just get pushed in that position. Like it's not like I intentionally sought out to be like, hey, I want to be the leader of this project, I'm gonna do everything to be in the forefront. But for whatever reason, I guess I just demonstrated a couple of these characteristics, and they kind of was like, hey, you take these reins. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned, it's not for everybody. Some people are genuinely just comfortable being a developer, they don't want to go higher, and that's fine.
Right.
But I think this episode is more for those who aspire not to be limited to this
Yeah.
certain role. And me personally, I'm an introvert. I'm not the most social person, but I had to just work at it. I had
Yeah.
to make myself more social. I'm doing things like this podcast,
Yeah.
and just because you have a limitation, that doesn't mean that you have to stay in that limitation forever. If you're
Absolutely.
active, you can change, you can improve.
Oh yeah, and I think that's just, again, that kind of goes back to being a product of your craft, right? Like, so when you think about, even Angular, right? How many different iterations and versions it's gone through? React, how many iterations and different versions? How many frameworks and different libraries that have been created that have been spin-offs or that use React to be the building blocks or the foundation of their framework, like Next.js, for example. Like, when you start thinking about, like, thinking outside the box, right? Using what is presented to you as an opportunity to build something greater or better, that applies to you as well, right? Like, not just the things that you're building, not just the code that you're writing, but also you as a person, right? If you think about yourself as code, right? How do you improve? How do you create a different lane or avenue for you to advance to the next version of yourself, right? When you think about things that you really want to accomplish in life, they can't just be about coding, right? They have to be more than that. And then that's where that leadership quality comes in. Like even when you said like, oh, well, I didn't necessarily go out looking for it, but when it came down to it, I stepped into said role amicably, right? Like I just kind of did it for whatever reason, like it's innately in you. And so I think that when you get the opportunity, even if you don't recognize it in the beginning, I think it's always important to really seize opportunity because it doesn't always just fall in your lap. Sometimes, you got to take it, but if it does fall in your lap, hey, you got to take it, man. You got to seize it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because these opportunities, with any opportunity in general, it doesn't last forever. There's that window where you grab it, and if you don't grab it, it flies away. So,
Yeah.
when these moments occur that allow you to flash your leadership capabilities, it's showtime. You have to show out. You have to, showcase that this is in me. This is what I want. And another thing about leadership that I found is that you have to be the person that knows what's going on. You make an effort to be informed
Yeah.
because it's really easy to, like we mentioned, it's really easy to lay back and just be focused on your little small sliver, your little small domain, and you're not really learning what others are doing or what the bigger picture is.
Yeah.
And when during stand up time, when they're speaking to you and you're only speaking in context of this little sliver, they're like, okay, this is somebody who just belongs in this little sliver. But when they give you the opportunity to speak and you can paint that bigger picture, they're like, okay, maybe we need to move this guy up. Okay, he's taking accountability for this problem. We need to level him up. So,
Yeah.
you know, you demonstrated that at several of your jobs.
Oh,
You came in as one thing, but just because you were able to embody these traits that we're talking about, they just had no choice but to move you up.
yeah. And I will also say this. I think that a lot of people get discouraged if the actual title or the position isn't readily available, right? You mentioned this before where you say, well, oh, I'm only paid to do this. But see, a true leader isn't looking for, accolades or, recognition or whatever the case may be. They just see something, a need, and then they fulfill said need. I'm not thinking about compensation or I'm not thinking about, oh, what is the benefit to me, right? Because what a lot of these companies are looking for are people who are selfless, people who think about the bigger picture, not just what, again, their task is, but more or less, what is it that I can do to push either the project, the company, whatever, push some type of narrative forward that is beyond just my original scope. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have gone through what they call reviews, right?
Hmm.
So you get an assessment, and it's like, oh well, what are their leadership capabilities, or what are they doing that's be above and beyond, right? And above and beyond is kind of a shaky task, right? Because you could be above and beyond as a coder, but you can also be above and beyond in your position. Like if you do things that are outside of your scope of your position, then that's how you start moving up versus doing above and beyond as far as what you're supposed to be doing, but you're just doing more of that. So instead of completing one task during a sprint, I end up completing two tasks in a sprint. Well, that's not giving me any leadership accolades. That's just saying that I'm going above and beyond my coder job. But when you say, oh, well, they introduced this new technology or they led the charge on trying to implement this particular code change, and then it ended up being a benefit to the entire project, that's going above and beyond outside of your scope. Now you're starting to get those eyeballs on you. You're starting to get that recognition. You're starting to get those people who are higher ups that's making these decisions to see who you are as a person, not just as another resource or your job or what your position is.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Like, it's even like a video game, right? Like an
Mhm.
RPG. If you just level up the same, like your strength attribute over and over and over and over, you're eventually going to be limited.
Mhm.
You're going to come to this point of diminishing returns to where, okay, this isn't really benefiting me as much as if I brought a little something else, if I invested time
Mhm.
in this other attribute.
Yeah.
So, like when as software engineers, a lot of times we want to be super coders. We want to know like maybe all the design patterns, all the tricks of the trade. Yeah, we can code this amazing thing, but you know you're going to get stuck there, and there's going to be a diminishing return of the
Yeah.
impact you're bringing to the organization.
Yeah.
you know you're not going to break out of that box they have for you. You don't want to be typecast as just a super coder, because a lot of these companies, if they just see you as that, they just want to keep you there. Like, oh, he's really good at this
That's
and
right.
just this, and we could just keep him there. They'll make you comfortable right there,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's very dangerous for your career.
No, absolutely. And when you really think about what you're trying to accomplish, like nobody wants to feel stagnant. You know, if you really desire moving up, then you kind of yearn, like you feel unfulfilled sometimes. Like, oh well, this isn't enough for me anymore. Like just going in here, completing, a requirement. Okay, now I've done my task, moving on to the next. That gets mundane. And if you really find it in yourself that I want to move up in this company, or even just move up in my, contributions to a project or a company, it doesn't have to even be your same company. Because a lot of times you might not actually get that promotion where you are. You might have to take your skill set and your rapport and what you've built at this company and take it to another one to get that, actual title, which that's what I did actually. So I never got quote unquote a lead title at Console More, but when I went to my next position, that's when I actually went in for the lead position and I got it. Not simply just because they knew who I was, but they saw what I had to offer. So everything that I learned and everything that I amassed and all of the skill sets that I mastered at my previous job, I use that to leverage myself into a leadership role. And so sometimes you may not get it where you are, but you use your tenure, you use your experience, you use what you've learned, and you use what you've done at this particular position. Maybe that's a junior, maybe that's a senior, maybe that's just, no type of designation of what your level is, and you're just a developer, and then you use that to go into your next role.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point you made about you being able to take these skills with you. And it kind of goes to the point that we were talking about earlier, where you don't perform at your title, at your pay grade.
Yeah.
You have to perform not at the level that you are being rewarded at, but at the level you want to be.
Hmm.
Because when you have these skills, you have these attributes, they don't disappear when you go to another company, and your
Absolutely.
reputation precedes you. So if your current company doesn't value this skill set, somebody else can say, man, this guy's fantastic. He really knows what's going on. We want him here at our company. And boom, you eventually will have those opportunities to be compensated for those skills you have. But you have to have those skills in the first place. You have to have taken the time to develop them in order to get these opportunities.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be transparent, man. When I went for that leadership role, I didn't I didn't know if I was supposed to be a lead or not. However, that didn't stop me from applying, because I think that sometimes we feel like we're not there yet. And even though I didn't feel like I was there yet, like as far as experience was concerned, I did feel a certain level of why not? Like I was doing leadership things at my previous company, even though I didn't have the title. Like I'm good enough. And I think self-confidence is a big part of leadership as well. Like you got to be willing to take the risk. You got to be willing to step out on faith. You got to be willing to do what the next person is not willing to do. Because there's a lot of applicants out there that sees that quote unquote lead role and they don't apply at all. Even though if they might be at the same position and the same expertise, the same skill set as you, but because of that self-doubt, they don't even try. So I think that that's another piece of it is that sometimes you just got to reach out. You just got to try. and see if you're there. Start doing, interviews for that next roll up. Even if you're not really looking to move, I think that there's a valuable lesson to learn of what other companies are looking for. What are the requirements for this position outside of where I am? Because there may not be a leadership role available for you. Because a lot of times in this industry, you have to wait until it's your turn. Well, you don't have to wait. You can go look for it and you can go grasp that on your own.
Absolutely. And the thing about leadership, it just doesn't apply to your job. You can take that and flip it in so many different other areas of life, in a relationship, in your personal projects,
Mm-hmm.
just being able to lead, being able to have this vision and bring people together to get it accomplished. You can get your nonprofit off the ground and running. You can write your book. You can do so much more. So this skill of leadership, it allows you to be a force multiplier. You know, me and my team, we could do way more than any one of us could do individually. So this is why it's important to start thinking like a leader, even though your job may not quote unquote put you in that official title,
Mm-hmm.
because this is a trait that can benefit you in so many different ways.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Because, and I'm again not to be weird or nothing, but like I'm a natural born leader. Even when I was a child, like I had this. It was this little group at my church, and they call them Brian and the Killer Bees, right? And again, I'm a child. Like I don't know that I have this quality or this trait of people to follow me or people to just invest in me or recognize me as somebody that they trust with their actions or whatever it is that they're doing. Like, oh, if he say it's cool, I'm gonna do it. And I didn't even take it as such, but it makes sense now. Like when you have things outside of just your job or what you're being compensated for or what you feel like, oh, it's my duty to do, that's where that skill set begins, right? But the good thing about leadership is that it's something that can be learned, right? It's not a skill that is just only natural, right? You think about like somebody who lift weights. They didn't come out the womb as a weightlifter. You come out and you just decide, I want to be strong. And so you start doing what's necessary to accomplish whatever it is that you desire. And it's the same thing with leadership because there are, multiple books and courses and things like that. And that's another lane you can go down if you desire to be into leadership. And I would highly recommend it to just, again, groom yourself. Learn what you can to better yourself at where you're trying to go.
Yeah, that's an important point as well. Like it can be learned. Some people are more innately gifted with it, but if you don't have that innate gift, you can work at it. Just like you may. I don't. Michael Jordan didn't come into the league as Michael Jordan. Was I think he was cut from his high school basketball team,
Yeah,
but him
yeah.
being cut, that really motivated him. That put this intense desire, and he just worked at it, and he's known as one of the, if not the best in
Yeah.
basketball,
Yep.
one of the best.
Hey, that could be argued. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of
Yeah,
people that. Hey, I'm curious, man. Hey, you gonna start something, man, with that one, but you gonna start something with that one. Who's the goat?
yeah,
Yeah.
but he went from somebody that was cut to somebody who's memorialized in basketball, and that's because he put the work in. So
Hmm.
just because me personally, I'm an introvert. I love being by myself. I don't naturally like to deal with a bunch of people, you know. So me naturally, I don't have the profile of what you think a leader should have,
Yeah.
because a leader is often looked at as a people person.
Hmm.
But you know, me wanting to accomplish certain things, it meant that I had to work with people. I couldn't do everything by myself, so I had to step out from some of these natural characteristics I have and realize that, hey, with enough work, I can change it and become more of who I need to be,
Hmm.
and become a leader.
So when you say become who I need to be,
Mm,
like that to me means that you do kind of possess those qualities, right? Like for you to even recognize that means that I see something that needs to be done. You see what I'm saying? What we were
yeah,
just talking about earlier. I see a need, I see an end to a means, and I know that this needs to be done. So I'm just going to do it to get the result, right?
yeah,
Which is a leadership quality. Like I understand what you're saying because it's not, it may not be on the forefront of your mind, but sometimes you exhibit behaviors that you might not even recognize in yourself. And some other person might say, oh, you know what? I see something in you. I see a certain level of, ambition, and I see a little bit of initiative in you. And so getting a mentor, sometimes you might get lucky to just have somebody take you under their wing because they recognize something in you might not recognize in yourself. But at the same time, to seek out said mentor is also a
mm,
great opportunity to say, you know what, I want to be like that person. Let me start trying to, rub elbows. Let me try to get in good graces. Let me try to communicate. Let me try to earn a particular position in this particular person's eyesight so that I can start feeding off of their, insight.
right. I think there's also this concept of a servant leader.
Mm,
Before you could be a great leader, you have to have the mindset of serving, of providing benefit to others,
mm,
of thinking outside of yourself, of having your mission be something that doesn't only benefit you. And I think, like you mentioned, that finding that mentor that does help you think in terms of something other than yourself. It gives you a broader perspective.
yeah.
So, for somebody who's really seeking leadership, how would you recommend that they go and find this mentor, or does a mentor find you?
And so it could happen either way. Um, I think that it's more advantageous to find it because if you recognize good qualities in a leader, 9 times out of 10, they'll be a better mentor versus somebody just haphazardly finding you. Like, okay, somebody might recognize something in you, but who's to say that they are a great leader, right? But if you, and not saying that that's a bad thing, like, don't get me wrong, that can be a great thing because they might do more for you if they find you than if you find them. However, I think the good thing and the positive part about finding a mentor is that you've already recognized something in them and you want to model yourself behind them. And I'm just going to be honest, a lot of leaders are, they see value in being recognized, right? Like, hey, this person over here sees my value, I'm doing my job. That kind of um lets them know, that's like confirmation, like, oh, I'm being a good leader because this person who's watching me and seeing that there's value in what I'm doing and what I'm providing. So I think there's definitely value in both lanes. um, but a lot of times the people that have recognized me have given me greater value than people that I've recognized as mentors.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And to kind of dig deeper into dealing with a mentor, I think there's a certain way that you have to approach these mentors. You have
Mhm.
to come in and be ready to go. You can't waste their time. You need to have a clear objective in mind. And when they're giving you some of their time, or when they schedule something, you have to show up. You can't be casual and just pop in whenever you feel like it, because they're going to cut you off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's about also recognizing the importance of the value they're giving to you.
Mm, yeah. I mean, that's rich because I think that a lot of people just assume that they deserve this information or they deserve this time or they're worthy of this mentorship. Like and that's not the case because this person has gone through the process. This person has basically achieved what you're trying to achieve. And that's not to be taken lightly because the fact that you're even reaching out to this person or that this person is even spending their time with you says a lot, right? About how valuable you might be, right? Because you have to study yourself approved. And if you aren't putting forth the right type of effort and you're not taking this seriously, then that mentor may deem you unworthy, not because of your actual skill set or your ability to be a leader, but you have to, for the lack of a better word, you got to pay homage. Like, you have to show me that you're real about this and respecting me and my time that I'm giving to you for free, like,
Yep.
that's valuable. But then then also kind of leads me down to another path. Like, what you think about these like gurus and people where you can pay for the rite of passage, quote unquote.
Man, I think a lot of them are nonsense. You have some real ones,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of like, in martial arts, they call them McDojos. Like you get this black belt like 2 months later, but it's
Yeah,
all about paying that money to get the
yeah.
next level of belt. You
Mhm.
know, a real leader, a real mentor, they're gonna have proven results. Like you're able to see what they've done, and you're also able to see some of the proteges that they've reared. So there's evidence of who they are and what they can do.
Yeah.
So, like how can I tell you how to be an excellent coder if I've never touched a computer in my life,
Right. So,
So there's snake oil salesmen, but there's real ones, and the real ones, their results speak. Their results speak for them.
yeah. And I know you've taken some courses. I know I have. There's such thing as what they call it, investing in yourself, right?
Hmm.
And I think that a big portion of that is knowing the difference between gaining information and buying information, right? So it's always this fine line between what I can find out for myself and then that, what are they really providing me value with? Because I feel like at this day and age, there's always a way to find out any information. However, there's also a process of, trial and error, things like that. And so by taking on these courses on these quote unquote gurus, they may be able to fast track your way to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. How do you know though, right? Like, so you say that the results show themselves, you can
Mm.
always pay for reviews, da 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 da.
Yeah.
Is there like a limit on like a number or how much you think you're willing to pay for a course? Because when you talk
Mm.
about going to the next level from like a developer to a lead, we're talking about, tens of thousands of dollars. Like, is it you
Mm.
think where do you find your balance?
So yeah, I think investing in education, investing in knowledge is just that. It's an investment, and you have to calculate the possible returns from this. So, you can easily be fleeced if this information it hasn't been well. With an investment, you don't always know, but
Right.
you're working on probability. So
Hmm.
you just like with anything, you've done your due diligence. Maybe you've spoken with a couple of people who've taken this, got an immense value out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and it also makes logical sense, like it lines up.
Yeah.
So, okay, say for example, I want to get better at football. I'm going to go to this particular coach who's worked with maybe Tom Brady, who's worked with Ben
Oh, you got
Roethlisberger.
money, but you got money, but
Right. Just this is a hypothetical.
yeah, yeah.
You're,
Yeah.
you're going to somebody who has a proven track record.
Hmm.
And I think another thing is they're not going to tell you what you want to hear. These are people that are often straightforward and blunt. They're going to say,
Hmm.
hey, this is where you're lacking. This is what you need to improve on. And this is how you get there. So
Yeah.
it's just those couple of factors that help you have a higher probability of not wasting your money. And in terms of dollar amount you want to invest, I believe that there shouldn't really be a limit as long as you believe that there's going to be sufficient return.
So I can't help but ask, man. And obviously, if you don't want to put it out there, but what's the most you done ever paid for any course? It ain't got to be,
Mm,
coding related or whatever, but just
okay.
in general, like what's the most you pay for a course?
So Udemy, let me just look this up real quick. This is just one account. Okay.
Okay.
So obviously it's not one course, but this is just to showcase to you kind of like how serious I take investing in these courses.
Okay.
Let's see, 1 second here.
And while you looking that up, I'm gonna tell you right now, man. Man, I paid $5 grand for a course one time.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know, and it seems like an absorbent amount. And I will say this: don't get caught up in what you think you might do or what you think you might
Yeah.
use. You need to make sure that whatever it is that you're investing in, that you are, I'm talking about, like, you're on it. You really want that to be. So like if you looking into being a leader and you want to go into leadership and you want to get a leadership course, make sure that that's not just a pipe dream.
Mhm.
Don't dabble if you're going to be spending exorbitant amounts. You know what I mean? And that's something that I learned, because
Yeah.
not saying that the information wasn't valuable and that the course wasn't worth it, but I wasn't really ready to invest in myself, in my actions, as I was in the actual concept of what I was, trying to learn. But
So yeah, I'm looking here. It says 753 courses, and this is on one account. So
153 courses?
no, 753.
Wait a minute. Hold on. 700, bro?
Yeah,
Like, wait a
I'll
minute.
just
Hold on. So
combine.
how much is, like, are you paying for these courses?
Yeah, yeah. You get them for like $10, $12, but that's
But
like
even
ten
but
thousand
even with
dollars.
that but even with that being said, man, but wow. Okay, so okay, let me ask you this. Regardless of
Mm,
how much, right? Because
yeah, yeah,
we can just assume we talking about thousands, right?
yeah.
Uh how many, like, is it, I'm just, you tell me, like, I'm gonna
Mm,
assume that some of them might have been worth it, some of them might have been not.
yeah, yeah.
Like, what do you think the percentage of that? Because
Mm,
yeah, what do you think percentage of that is actually worth the money? Like, even though it's $10, $12, when you think about the
right,
whole
right.
grand scheme of what you're doing and why you're purchasing these courses,
Mm,
like, what do you think the amount, like, as far as
okay.
value?
So I think like when it comes to purchasing these courses, should you take the path I've taken? Probably not. But I'm somebody that's extreme, and I want to make sure I have the best tools on hand.
Yeah,
So like reality, in reality, you probably only need like maybe 3 or 4 of these courses because I can't watch all of these courses.
right.
But I like having them on hand. I like being able to access them if I
If I
need
Yeah,
them.
in the case,
And
you got a library, right? Like, it's
yeah, like a
basically like,
library.
yeah, you got a library full of books. I might
Yeah.
not read them all, but if I want to read them, you know
Right,
what
it's
I mean?
there.
Hey, they're there. You know what I mean?
But that
Uh,
might sound like a lot of money, but I was making $11 an hour, all throughout my 20s. And once I got into coding, my first coding job, making $30 an hour at Consulmo, which is about 60K a year. So I
yeah,
went from making,
triple
yeah, it's
up.
like making like 20 something K to 60K, and then 60K all the way up to like 160K base salary. And,
Yeah,
and within like what, like 5 years. So
yeah.
how much more is this knowledge paying off for me, just
Yeah.
being willing
No,
to
you're right.
invest.
You're right. Because you never know, man. Like you said, I might want to go and learn, something completely different and just completely transition, which is pretty dope in this industry too. Like, leadership is not the only path of transition. You can
Right,
transition from front end to back end, or full stack, or you might want to go into AI, or you might want to go into, machine learning, or whatever the case may be. Like, there's so many avenues. You might want to transition from web development to game development. Like, I
right,
got my
right.
degree in game and simulation programming, but my actual career actually transitioned into web development and then app development, and then I went from web development to mobile app development. Like, it's the sky is the limit. Once you get the core skill set to develop, you can do anything, man. It was just so dope.
Oh yeah, I forgot to answer your question. The most I paid for a single course is
Mhm.
$1,500, and
Okay.
it was from, her name is Hala Taha. She makes how to how to really push yourself on LinkedIn kind of course. And
Okay.
I've seen a lot of people take the course and get these amazing results, but
Gotcha.
I didn't really do all the things in the course because sometimes you just kind of set in your ways. So
Mm, mm.
um, you made a great point, man. You don't want to be a walking encyclopedia. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't apply it, it
Yeah.
ultimately has to result in some kind of directed action.
Yeah.
If you're not taking action, you're just going to have a bunch of knowledge and you're going to be in the same position. So
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that that kind of lends itself to another point. Like when I was talking about how you don't want to just buy a course if you're not ready to take it on like fully, right? And I think that a lot of times people see the end result and they don't really think about what it takes to actually get said result. Because when you buy these courses, these people have been where you're trying to go, you where you hope, right? Like you said, there's a lot of people out there that's kind of like, you know, McDojo in it. Like they make it seem like they're, you know, these gurus or whatever, but they're just trying to get a quick buck. But I think that innately, like a lot of these people do have done what you're trying to do, but they're just showing you their way, right? And a lot of times we might take these courses and we're like, well, that sounds good, but I don't think that's gonna work for me. Well, why
right.
did you, yeah, why did you buy the course then? Because like you gotta buy it and say, you know what, I don't care what it takes, I'm willing to do whatever. I'm gonna get it done because this is how I bet. No, this is how bad I want, you know, this result. So, and I'm not to say that if you follow it to a T, it's automatic, and they always have that disclosure, right? Like, oh, your experiences or your results may vary, you know, but I do feel like you have to go into it with a mindset that no matter what comes with this is how serious I am about moving to the next level, whatever that
Right.
means, whether it be leadership or, you know, social media or, you know, Amazon shipping or whatever the case may be, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, you have to be willing to go the whole 9 yards and even further.
Yeah, ultimately everything has to result in action. Like what gets you results is intelligent, directed action. And buying
Mhm.
these courses, buying these books, they should ultimately result in you taking more intelligent action. If you're just
Mhm.
reading them, you're wasting your money because nothing gets done without action.
Yeah,
So it has to be a mixture, like maybe 50% studying and reading and then 50% action. And ultimately you have to not be afraid and just try stuff out and
yeah,
see where it goes. And then, okay, I'm gonna adjust. I'm gonna make adjustments and try something else.
yeah,
And, eventually you're gonna start, finding that path of success.
yeah. And I think that that's another good thing about having a like a multitude of content to consume about a singular subject matter. And I wouldn't just stop at a single course. Like I would still do my own personal research. Anything that I learn in a course, I'm gonna, you know, cross reference and go see if anybody else has, you know, done this or said this or whatever the case may be to try to gain validity, but also to gain my own understanding, right? Because just taking what somebody said and try to cookie cutter it, that is a way to go about it. I'm not saying that that doesn't work because it's worked time and time again. Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, if it's not for you, you need to learn how to manipulate it to make it for you. So it's like how to make a sandwich, right? If you go get a book on how to make a sandwich, well, the way that they say make a sandwich, yeah, it might get you a sandwich, but is that going to be a sandwich that you really truly enjoy? You know, is that going to be your sandwich that's
Mhm.
tailored for you? But what you really want to do is you want to learn the concepts. You want to learn what the core pieces or the core skill set it is to execute what you're trying to do and then make it your own.
Exactly. And man, we at the top of the hour. Man, this was an amazing conversation. Did you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts?
Man, again, take what you want and grasp it. Like, don't wait till somebody give it to you. If you see an opportunity or an opportunity is presented to you, take it by the horns and drag it to the ground and conquer it.
Exactly. On the closing note, be proactive, not reactive. But we like